Did you know that over 70% of rock's biggest legends got caught up in scandalous affairs with their co-stars, risking their careers, marriages, and even their bands? From John Lennon, who found both inspiration and chaos with May Pang, to Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull, whose passion ignited one of rock's biggest scandals. Here are 25 rock and roll legends who cheated with their co-stars. 1. John Lennon and May Pang. Time with May Pang wasn't just about wild parties for John Lennon, it was a time of freedom, music, and deep emotions. From the summer of 1973 to early 1975, Lennon stepped away from his marriage to Yoko Ono. But this wasn't just his choice. Ono, feeling their marriage struggles, actually encouraged it. At first, Lennon was unsure, but he soon left for Los Angeles with Pang, his young assistant. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She helped him fix broken relationships. She reconnected him with his son Julian and even made a rare jam session between Lennon and Paul McCartney happen, something fans never thought they'd see again. In Los Angeles, Lennon's life was wild. He spent time with party-loving friends like Keith Moon, Harry Nilsson, and Ringo Starr, leading to crazy nights and messy recording sessions. One of the most famous moments happened at the Troubadour, when a drunk Lennon was kicked out for yelling at the Smothers Brothers. But through all the chaos, he was still creative. With Pang's support, he made Walls and Bridges, an album that gave him one of his biggest hits, Whatever Gets You Through the Night. This time wasn't just a downfall, it was also a time of raw energy and rediscovery. Lennon was happy with Pang, but in early 1975, he returned to Yoko Ono. Pang later said he had thought about staying with her and even talked about marriage, but Ono may have used psychological tricks to bring him back. 2. Elvis Presley and Ann-Margret. Had a love that could have changed everything, Elvis Presley and Ann-Margret. They met in 1963 while filming Viva Las Vegas, and their chemistry was undeniable. But their bond wasn't just for the cameras. Ann-Margret, a strong performer herself, shared Presley's passion for music and performing. She later said they were connected in a way words couldn't explain. Off-screen, their romance was just as intense. They spent nights together, wrote each other loving letters, and built something deeper than just a movie romance. But Presley's life wasn't fully his own. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had already planned his future, one that included marrying Priscilla Beaulieu. She fit the image Parker wanted for him: quiet, loyal, and not looking for the spotlight. Ann-Margret, with her own career and independence, didn't fit that mold. Presley, torn between his heart and his duty, kept seeing her in secret, giving her gifts and sharing his feelings. Priscilla, aware of the rumors, confronted him, but their relationship was an open secret in Hollywood. Things changed when Ann-Margret admitted their romance in an interview. Under pressure, Presley ended it and went ahead with his marriage to Priscilla in 1967. But his connection with Ann-Margret never completely faded. Unlike many of his past loves, she stayed in his life with respect and affection. When Presley died in 1977, Ann-Margret was one of the few non-family members at his funeral. 3. Mick Jagger and Marianne Faithfull. Had many famous relationships, Mick Jagger, the lead singer of the Rolling Stones, but his time with Marianne Faithfull was one of the most intense. In 1966, while still with his girlfriend Chrissy Shrimpton, Jagger became interested in Faithfull, a rising singer and actress. She was part of London's wild swinging 60s scene, and their relationship was full of excitement, fame, and bad decisions. Faithfull, whose hit song As Tears Go By was written by Jagger and Keith Richards, got pulled deeper into the band's reckless lifestyle. What started as a thrilling romance soon became a troubled and painful journey. One of the biggest scandals in their relationship happened in 1967 during the Redlands substance bust. Police raided Keith Richards' home and found Jagger, Faithfull, and others in the middle of a substance-fueled party. The press went crazy. especially after it was revealed that Faithful was wrapped in only a fur rug. This moment became one of the most talked about scandals of the decade. Jagger's arrest added to his rebellious image, but for Faithful, it was the beginning of a downward spiral. Her career suffered as she fell deeper into opioids addiction, and her bright future faded away. By the early 1970s, their relationship was falling apart. Jagger was unfaithful, and Faithful struggled with addiction. When Jagger had a child with another woman, Marsha Hunt, Faithful was devastated. As Jagger moved on, she sank further into despair, eventually living on the streets for years before rebuilding her life. 4. Eric Clapton and Pattie Boyd. Obsession with Pattie Boyd led to one of rock's most dramatic love triangles, Eric Clapton. Boyd, a model and muse, was married to George Harrison of the Beatles. She inspired famous songs like Something and I Need You. But Clapton, fascinated by her beauty, became obsessed. In the early 1970s, his feelings erupted in the song Layla, a desperate love song based on a Persian tale of forbidden love. Clapton was tormented because Boyd stayed loyal to Harrison despite his advances. The tension reached a peak when Clapton confessed his love for Boyd directly to Harrison. Instead of anger, Harrison responded with calm indifference, making the situation even stranger. Heartbroken, Clapton turned to opioids to numb his pain. Years later, in 1974, Boyd finally left Harrison and gave in to Clapton's pursuit. But the victory was short-lived. Despite their passionate start, Clapton's drinking and infidelity ruined their marriage. Clapton, who had written so many songs about his love for Boyd, ended up betraying her repeatedly. He had affairs, including one with Italian model Lori Del Santo, who later had his son, Connor. His marriage to Boyd became filled with heartbreak and broken promises. After years of emotional pain, Boyd divorced him in 1989. What seemed like a great love story was really a tale of obsession, betrayal, and disillusionment. Despite everything, Clapton and Harrison stayed friends, showing how strange and complicated love in rock and roll could be. 5. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. Had a wild and messy relationship, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. It was full of passion, but also filled with chaos and pain. They met in 1990 when Cobain was still with Toby Vale, the drummer of Bikini. But Love had already set her sights on him. By 1991, as Nirvana became famous with Nevermind, they finally got together. From the start, their love was tangled with addiction, leading to a downward spiral that would define their time together. In early 1992, Cobain and Love married in a small ceremony in Hawaii. Love was already pregnant with their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. But trouble started right away. A Vanity Fair article claimed Love used opioids while pregnant, leading to an investigation that briefly took Frances away from them. Their life became a public disaster, filled with fights, breakdowns, and substance addiction. Cobain, unhappy with fame and sinking into depression, pulled away from the world. Love, on the other hand, thrived in the chaos, enjoying the attention. Their love burned intensely but was toxic, full of betrayal and addiction. The last months of Cobain's life were dark. In March 1994, he overdosed on Rohypnol in Rome. Many believed it was a failed self-inflicted death attempt. A few weeks later, he was found dead in his Seattle home from a shotgun wound. It was ruled a self-inflicted death, but rumors and conspiracy theories spread, with some blaming Love. Whether true or not, their love story was no fairy tale. It was a tragic chapter in rock history, leaving behind more questions than answers. 6. David Bowie and Ava Cherry. Had a relationship with Ava Cherry that was more than just romance. It changed his music, David Bowie. At the time, Bowie was married to Angie Bowie. Their open marriage led to many affairs, but Cherry was different. A stunning model and singer, She became his lover, friend, and inspiration. In the early 1970s, as Bowie moved beyond glam rock, Cherry introduced him to American soul and funk. Through her, he discovered the music of Aretha Franklin and Al Green, which influenced his next big transformation. Cherry wasn't just part of Bowie's personal life, she became part of his artistic journey. She joined his circle, shaping his new sound. He brought her to Philadelphia's Sigma Sound Studios, where he recorded Young Americans. This album marked a major shift in his career, blending rock with smooth, soulful rhythms. Cherry's influence was everywhere in this new Bowie, stylish, cool, and full of swagger. But their love and music weren't enough to keep them together. Bowie's growing stimulant addiction took over, leading him into chaos and paranoia. Even Cherry, who had helped him reinvent himself, got lost in the storm. By 1976, Bowie left behind the excess of Los Angeles and moved to Berlin, seeking a fresh start. Cherry stayed behind, watching the man she had influenced move on. She continued her own music career, forever connected to that moment in rock history. The Young Americans era remains one of Bowie's boldest reinventions, and Cherry played a key role in it. 7. Ozzy Osbourne and Michelle Pugh. Was known for his wild lifestyle, Ozzy Osbourne. His music, dark image, and chaotic behavior made him a rock legend. But behind the scenes, his personal life was just as messy. His marriage to Sharon Osbourne had survived addiction, fights, and betrayals. But nothing tested their bond like his 4-year affair with Michelle Pugh. Pugh wasn't just a random fling, she was a celebrity hairstylist who worked closely with Ozzy. Over time, their connection grew stronger. This was different from Ozzy's usual reckless behavior. Pugh later said Ozzy made her feel special, like she was the most important person in his life. It wasn't just about attraction. It was emotional. That made it impossible for Sharon to ignore. In 2016, the truth came out, and their marriage almost collapsed. Sharon, who had always stood by Ozzy, finally reached her breaking point. She kicked him out and told the world she wasn't sure if she could ever forgive him. The media went wild, and their children, including Kelly Osbourne, were caught in the middle. Ozzy tried to explain his actions, blaming a newly diagnosed addiction, this time to compulsive behavior. Some believed him, others thought it was just an excuse. 8. Bruce Springsteen and Patti Scialfa. Was seen as the voice of the working class, Bruce Springsteen, a loyal and grounded musician. When he married actress Julianne Phillips in 1985, it looked like a perfect match. He was a rock star at his peak, and she was a Hollywood beauty. But their marriage had problems from the start. Phillips grew up in privilege and struggled to relate to Springsteen's world. He, in turn, felt disconnected from hers. Their relationship faded quickly. Meanwhile, another woman was always there, Patti Scialfa, a talented musician and member of the E Street Band. They had been friends for years, but by 1988, during the Tunnel of Love Express tour, their chemistry became obvious. Their connection wasn't a secret. On stage, their glances and harmonies told the story. Off stage, the paparazzi caught them together. Soon, everyone knew. Julianne Phillips, embarrassed and heartbroken, filed for divorce. The rock star who once seemed different, real and loyal, was now caught in a scandal. 9. Axl Rose and Stephanie Seymour. Was used to chaos, Axl Rose. As the lead singer of Guns N' Roses, he was famous for his wild temper and electric stage presence. But in 1991, he started a love story that would become one of rock's most talked about relationships. Stephanie Seymour was a top supermodel and dating billionaire Peter Brandt. But when she starred in the Don't Cry music video, her chemistry with Axl was clear. She left Brandt, and soon she and Axl were the hottest couple in the tabloids. Their romance was intense, full of love and drama. In 1992, their relationship took center stage in the November Rain music video. The extravagant video, costing millions, showed Seymour as Ackles' bride in what looked like a fairy tale love story. But behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. Their fiery passion led to constant fights. Axl's jealousy clashed with Seymour's strong personality, turning their love into a constant battle. 10. Gene Simmons and Cher. The legendary Kiss bassist Gene Simmons lived for excess. Women, fame, and fortune surrounded him, and he bragged about being with thousands of women. But in the late 1970s, his romance with Cher stood out from the rest. Cher had just ended things with Sonny Bono and was enjoying her freedom. When she met Simmons, there was an instant spark. He was bold, confident, and completely different from anyone she had been with before. Unlike most of his flings, their relationship was public. Simmons even spent time with her children, something rare for him. Cher saw something special in him, and Simmons admitted she understood him in a way most women didn't. But even though their bond was strong, Simmons couldn't change his ways. While dating Cher, he also kept Diana Ross close, creating a messy love triangle. In the end, Simmons chose Ross over Cher, leaving her heartbroken. 11. Tommy Lee's crazy life. Was a wild man, Tommy Lee, long before he met Pamela Anderson. Before her, he married Heather Locklear, a famous actress who tried to bring calm to his chaos. But even she couldn't keep him in line. They were together from the mid-'80s to the early '90s. But Lee's non-stop partying and cheating rumors ended their marriage. Locklear had enough and left, and Lee went right back to his wild ways. Then, on New Year's Eve in 1994, everything changed. He met Pamela Anderson, and their connection was instant. Just 4 days later, they ran off to Cancun and got married. The media went crazy. Anderson, the Baywatch star, and Lee, the reckless rocker from Motley Crue. Their love was intense, but trouble followed them everywhere. Their relationship was full of passion, but also full of problems. Their private home video was stolen and spread across the world, making them even more famous for all the wrong reasons. They were always in the headlines, facing lawsuits and scandals. Lee was jealous, and his temper got worse as Anderson's fame grew. In 1998, things hit a breaking point. A fight led to Lee's arrest, and their marriage fell apart. 12. Lindsey Buckingham and Fleetwood Mac's drama. Wasn't just a band, Fleetwood Mac. It was a mess of love, heartbreak, and tangled relationships. Everyone knew about the fights between Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, but there was another secret romance that shook things up. Buckingham and Christine McVie had a brief but important connection that made the band's chaos even worse. By the late 70s, Fleetwood Mac was one of the biggest bands in the world, but behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Buckingham and Nicks fought constantly, their old love turning into non-stop arguments. At the same time, McVie's marriage to bassist John McVie was ending, and she started to grow close to Buckingham. It started as a quiet understanding between two bandmates, but soon it became something more, a brief escape from all the drama around them. McVie was calm and steady, while Buckingham was intense and restless. Unlike his loud fights with Nicks, his time with McVie was quieter, built on music and connection. But in Fleetwood Mac, no secret lasted long. When their relationship was exposed, it only made things worse. The band was already full of tension, and this just added more fuel to the fire. The pain, love, and betrayals all spilled into their music, shaping Rumors, one of the greatest heartbreak albums of all time. 13. Keith Richards and Anita Pallenberg. The relationship between Keith Richards and Anita Pallenberg was not just a rock and roll romance, it was a betrayal that shook the Rolling Stones. Before she was with Richards, Pallenberg was with Brian Jones, a founding member of the band. She was more than a girlfriend. She influenced their style, attitude, and even their music. But behind the fame, her relationship with Jones was falling apart. His behavior became more unstable due to substance use, and he turned abusive. By the time she left him, his downfall had already started. Things took a turn in the late 60s during a trip to Morocco. Jones, in poor health, became aggressive toward Pallenberg. Richards stepped in, and Pallenberg left with him. This betrayal broke Jones, isolating him further and pushing him away from the band he had helped create. Meanwhile, Richards and Pallenberg became inseparable, diving into a world of rebellion, excess, and dangerous habits that mirrored their music. But their relationship had its own betrayals. In the early 70s, rumors spread that Pallenberg had an affair with Mick Jagger while filming Performance. The on-screen chemistry between them seemed too real. 14. Steven Tyler and Bebe Buell. The wild life of a rock star was lived by Steven Tyler, and his affair with model and singer Bebe Buell was no different. Buell was linked to many rock legends, but her time with Tyler in the mid-70s had lasting consequences. She became pregnant with his child, a secret kept for years. Tyler, lost in a world of partying and addiction, was not ready to be a father. Buell saw the chaos and made a shocking decision. She told everyone that her longtime partner, musician Todd Rundgren, was the father. She later explained that she wanted to protect her daughter from the unstable world Tyler lived in. For years, Liv Tyler believed Rundgren was her father. But as she grew older, the resemblance to Steven Tyler became impossible to ignore. Eventually, the truth came out, changing everything she knew about herself. By then, Tyler had cleaned up his act and built a relationship with his daughter, but the lost years could never be regained. 15. Nikki Sixx and Vanity. Few lived the wild rock star life like Nikki Sixx, the bassist of Motley Crue. By the mid-'80s, he was famous for partying hard and making reckless choices. His relationship with singer and actress Vanity was just as chaotic. Vanity, once mentored by Prince, was drawn to Sixx's dangerous energy. But there was a problem. Sixx was already in a relationship when they got together, setting the stage for trouble. Their romance was intense and fueled by addiction. They vanished for days, lost in a world of substances and excess. Their hotel rooms became substance dens, and their love story turned into a cycle of fights, paranoia, and self-destruction. Vanity, who had spent years dealing with controlling men in the music industry, saw something different in Sixx. He was just as wild as she was. But that same recklessness made their relationship a ticking time bomb. As their substance use got worse, their lives fell apart. Vanity realized the danger and tried to escape, but Sixx kept pushing his limits. In the late 80s, he suffered a near-fatal overdose. He was legally dead for a few minutes before being revived with an adrenaline shot. Even then, he struggled to change. By that time, Vanity had left the rock world behind, finding faith and rejecting her past life. 16. Roger Waters and Carolyn Christie. The driving force behind Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, was known for pushing boundaries in music and in life. Before his affair with Caroline Christie, he was married to Judith Trim, an artist who had supported him from his early days. Their marriage, once a peaceful escape from fame, began to fall apart as Waters became obsessed with his music. The rock and roll world was full of temptations, and Waters, feeling distant from his wife, gave in to them. Then he met Carolyn Christie. Unlike Trim, who stayed away from the rock scene, Christie thrived in it. She understood the pressures of fame and embraced the wild lifestyle. Waters, frustrated with his marriage, found in her someone who shared his world of ambition and indulgence. Their connection grew, and before long, Waters left his wife to be with Christie. Their affair turned into a marriage that lasted over 20 years. During that time, Waters experienced career-defining moments, including his split from Pink Floyd and the legal battles that followed. Through it all, Christie stood by him. But as with many relationships built on passion and secrecy, cracks began to form. By the early 2000s, their marriage ended, bringing their long and intense relationship to a close. 17. Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli. A rock legend, Eddie Van Halen changed the way people played guitar. Valerie Bertinelli was a popular actress, loved by many. When they got married in the early 1980s, people thought they were the perfect couple. But behind the happy pictures, their marriage was falling apart. Van Halen's fame brought a wild lifestyle. He spent years touring, surrounded by fans and temptations. Rumors spread that he was unfaithful. At first, Bertinelli tried to ignore them, but eventually she couldn't. Van Halen struggled with alcohol and other problems, which hurt both his music and his marriage. Bertinelli later admitted she was also unfaithful. Their marriage was already broken. They stayed together for their son, Wolfgang, born in the early 1990s. But love wasn't enough. By the early 2000s, they separated, and though their divorce wasn't official for years, their marriage had ended long before. 18. Anthony Kiedis and Ione Skye. Lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Anthony Kiedis lived a wild life. His world was full of music, parties, and short-lived relationships. One of his most famous romances was with actress Ione Skye in the late 1980s. When they met, Kiedis was already with someone else, but he and Skye had an instant connection. Their relationship started as a secret, but soon became intense. Skye was used to the music scene, but dating Kiedis was different. Their romance was a roller coaster, moments of deep passion mixed with chaos. Kiedis struggled with addiction, which made things worse. Some days he was loving and devoted. Other days he disappeared into his own troubles. Kiedis's biggest problem was his own actions. He couldn't stay faithful, and each betrayal pushed Skye further away. Tired of the endless heartbreak, she left, choosing a more stable life. Meanwhile, Kiedis continued down a dark path before finally becoming sober. 19. The Chaos of Ronnie Wood and Ekaterina Ivanova. The wild guitarist of the Rolling Stones, Ronnie Wood, had always lived on the edge. But in 2008, his relationship with Ekaterina Ivanova turned into a disaster. For over 20 years, Wood had been married to Joe Wood, who had supported him through his wild partying and struggles with drinking. But then he met Ivanova, a 20-year-old cocktail waitress from Russia, and everything changed. He left his wife, shocking everyone, and threw himself into a chaotic relationship that quickly spun out of control. Their time together was a mess. Wood, in his 60s, tried to hold on to his youth by partying with Ivanova. They were often seen arguing in public, their fights becoming loud and dramatic. Ivanova didn't shy away from the attention. Instead, she fed into the chaos, making sharp comments about their love life and keeping their drama in the headlines. Wood's friends and fellow musicians watched helplessly as he spiraled into self-destruction, while Joe Wood, heartbroken and betrayed, tried to reach out, but he was too lost in his reckless choices. Everything collapsed in December 2009. A huge fight outside their London home ended with Wood being arrested. The scandal spread fast, marking the disastrous end of their affair. Ivanova later said their relationship had been toxic and that she had felt trapped in a destructive cycle. Wood, now facing shame and public backlash, finally checked into rehab. 20. Jimmy Page and the Forbidden Obsession. At the height of Led Zeppelin's fame, Jimmy Page was a rock god. He was a musical genius, admired by millions. But behind the fame and wild tours, he had a dark secret, his obsession with Lori Mattix. The rock world in the 1970s had its own twisted rules, and Page played by them. But even in that era, his relationship with Maddox, a teenage groupie, was disturbing. He knew the risks, knew the scandal it could cause, but he didn't stop. Unlike other rock stars who openly showed off their young lovers, Page kept Maddox hidden. He made sure there were no photos, no public gossip. He even arranged for her to be brought to him in secret, keeping her locked away from the world. To Maddox, it felt like a dream: fame, luxury, music. But in reality, it was control. She was living in the shadows of his world. Their relationship lasted for years, an open secret in the music industry. As an adult, Maddox later admitted that what once felt like a fantasy was actually something she had no control over. Page, however, never spoke about it, leaving their relationship as one of rock's most disturbing stories. 21. Mick Fleetwood and the Ultimate Betrayal. Few bands captured the turbulence of love and loss like Fleetwood Mac. Their music thrived on raw emotion, fueled by tangled relationships and heartbreak. Mick Fleetwood, the rhythmic backbone of the band, found himself swept into the same storm. His marriage to Jenny Boyd, sister of Pattie Boyd, had already weathered years of excess, addiction, and prolonged absences, but it was his affair with Sarah Ricoeur that shattered it beyond repair. Ricoeur wasn't just a passing romance. She was deeply embedded in the band's orbit, a trusted presence who gradually became something more. What started as an unspoken attraction simmered beneath the surface until it erupted into a full-blown affair. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was another fracture in the already fragile foundation of Fleetwood Mac. Jenny Boyd, heartbroken, watched her marriage crumble, but she wasn't the only casualty. Stevie Nicks, still nursing wounds from her own past relationship with Fleetwood, felt the sting of another loss. The fallout rippled through the band, further fueling their legendary tensions. Unlike many rock and roll flings that burned out in chaos, Fleetwood and Recker's relationship endured. They married in the late 1980s and remained together for years before parting ways in the 90s. But the scars lingered. The band, already a whirlwind of emotional wreckage, turned their pain into music. Every betrayal, every tangled love affair became part of their mythology. Fleetwood later admitted that love and loyalty had always been complicated for him, but he never regretted the wild road that brought him there. 22. Phil Collins and the affair that shattered his marriage. The legendary drummer and vocalist of Genesis, Phil Collins, built a career on his ability to channel deep, aching emotion into music. But behind the scenes, his personal life unraveled in a storm of heartbreak and betrayal. His first marriage to Andrea Bertorelli seemed like a love story meant to last. Two young dreamers meeting at a London drama school, separated when Bertorelli's family moved to Canada. Years later, fate reunited them, and in the mid-70s, with Genesis reaching new heights, they married. Collins even adopted her daughter, promising to be the father she never had. But fame rarely nurtures stability. As Genesis dominated the global stage, Collins became consumed by constant touring and long hours in the studio, leaving his wife to battle loneliness. Distance grew between them, and into that void stepped an old school friend. What began as friendly conversations soon deepened into something far more destructive. The truth emerged in slow, painful revelations, and when Bertorelli discovered the betrayal, their once solid marriage collapsed under the weight of broken trust and neglect. The pain didn't fade with the divorce. Instead, Collins poured his heartbreak into music, crafting anthems of sorrow and regret. His iconic album Face Value became a raw confessional, and In the Air Tonight echoed with unspoken anguish. Fans spun urban legends about the song's meaning, but beneath the speculation lay a simple truth. It was a monument to a love lost to betrayal. 23. Dave Grohl and the love triangle that shook the 90s. The drummer of Nirvana and leader of Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, was known as one of the good guys in rock. He seemed loyal and down to earth, but even he got caught up in a messy love story. In the mid-90s, he had an affair that quietly rocked the alternative rock world. His short but intense relationship with Louise Post, the singer of Veruca Salt, left scars that showed up in their music. At the time, Grohl was already in a serious relationship when he and Post connected. Their chemistry was strong, built on their love for music and the wild energy of 90s rock. But passion doesn't always last. Their affair was a ticking bomb, and when it exploded, it hurt more than just Grohl's girlfriend. Post, who had fallen hard, was left dealing with heartbreak and betrayal. She poured her pain into her songs, filling Veruca Salt's lyrics with raw emotions and hidden messages. Grohl also turned to music. The early Foo Fighters songs have lyrics that fans believe might be about this rocky love story. Unlike the big public scandals of rock's past, this one stayed in the background, hidden in the music and behind the stage lights. Over time, both moved on. Grohl found stability in his personal life, and Post kept making music. 24. Quincy Jones and Peggy Lipton. A music legend, Quincy Jones shaped some of the greatest records in history. But outside the studio, his love life was full of struggles and broken promises. In the 1970s, he married actress Peggy Lipton, known for her role in the Mod Squad. They seemed like the perfect Hollywood couple. She was a rising star, and he was already a giant in the music industry. Their love was groundbreaking at a time when interracial marriages in Hollywood were still rare. But behind the glamour, their relationship started to fall apart. Jones's success came with a lavish lifestyle, surrounded by models, singers, and famous figures. The rumors of his affairs spread through Hollywood, but at first, Lipton tried to ignore them. Over time, the whispers became impossible to avoid. She wasn't just competing with his career, she was competing with the endless temptations around him. Even as they raised their two daughters, including future actress Rashida Jones, their marriage kept crumbling. By the late 1980s, things fell apart for good. Jones's affairs and long absences pushed their marriage to the breaking point. Lipton had already sacrificed a lot of her career for their family, and she was exhausted by the heartbreak. They divorced, ending what had once seemed like a dream romance. Jones kept dating high-profile women, but never remarried. Lipton mostly stayed out of the spotlight until her return in Twin Peaks. 25. Don Henley and Stevie Nicks. Don Henley, drummer, songwriter, and one of the defining voices of the Eagles. Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac's mysterious queen, a woman whose haunting voice carried both pain and passion. Their names alone spoke of talent and drama, but together they became part of one of rock's most whispered-about affairs. It was the late 1970s. Nicks was already tangled in a stormy relationship with Lindsey Buckingham, her bandmate and former lover. Then Henley entered the picture, adding more chaos to her life. Their attraction was instant, their passion intense, but there was a problem. Henley was still involved with someone else. Nicks, fresh from one heartbreak, found herself in another complicated romance. Their time together was a blur of late-night recording sessions, industry parties, and moments of undeniable chemistry. But Nicks, who valued her independence, didn't want to be caught in another toxic love triangle. Henley, emotionally distant, kept her guessing. Their relationship became a frustrating mix of longing and uncertainty. Then came a rumor that still lingers in rock history. Nicks was allegedly pregnant with Henley's child. Years later, he claimed she had planned to name the baby Sarah, a name that later became one of Fleetwood Mac's most haunting songs. But their romance ended before it could become anything more. Nicks refused to be trapped by another man's indecision.